Welcome to Ancient Wisdom, Modern Life, where we explore timeless texts and their relevance today. I'm Professor Mark Jenkins, and I'm absolutely thrilled to dive into two fascinating books of the Hebrew Bible with you, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes.
And I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, cultural historian and philosophy enthusiast. Mark, I've been looking forward to this conversation because these two books seem to offer such contrasting perspectives on life, despite both being considered wisdom literature.
That's exactly right, Sarah. It's like having two wise grandparents giving you completely different life advice. Proverbs is that confident grandfather saying, "Follow these rules, work hard, and everything will turn out well." While Ecclesiastes is more like that contemplative grandmother who's seen it all and says, "Well, it's complicated."
That's a perfect analogy. Let's start by placing these books in their historical and cultural context. Both are part of what scholars call Hebrew wisdom literature, right?
Yes, wisdom literature was actually quite common throughout the ancient Near East. Egypt, Mesopotamia, and other surrounding cultures all had their own wisdom traditions. What made the Hebrew wisdom literature distinctive was its focus on the fear of the Lord as the foundation of wisdom.
And these books represent two different types of wisdom literature, don't they? Proverbs is more what we might call practical wisdom, rules for living well, while Ecclesiastes takes a more philosophical, even existential approach.
Absolutely. Scholars generally date Proverbs to the period of Solomon and later kings, roughly 10th to 6th centuries BCE. It's a collection built over time, with sections attributed to Solomon, Agur, and King Lemuel, among others. It represents the mainstream, established wisdom of ancient Israel.
Whereas Ecclesiastes, or Kohelet as it's called in Hebrew, was likely written later, perhaps in the Persian or early Hellenistic period. It's often attributed to Solomon, though many scholars see it as written in Solomon's voice rather than by him directly. What's fascinating is how it seems to be in dialogue with, sometimes even challenging, the more conventional wisdom of Proverbs.
Indeed. Let's dig into those contrasts. Proverbs presents life as relatively orderly and predictable. Good actions lead to good outcomes, and bad actions lead to bad outcomes. It's filled with practical advice about work, relationships, speech, and money.
Right, like Proverbs 10:4. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. It's straightforward cause and effect. But Ecclesiastes throws a wrench in this meat system with observations like chapter 9, verse 11. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all.
That's the heart of the contrast. Proverbs says, "Be righteous, work hard, and you'll prosper." Ecclesiastes says, "Well, I've seen righteous people suffer and wicked people prosper, so it's not that simple."
And this reflects something profound about human experience, doesn't it? We all want to believe in a just, orderly world where good is rewarded and evil is punished. That's what makes Proverbs so appealing. It offers a sense of control and certainty.
But reality often complicates that neat picture, which is where Ecclesiastes comes in. The writer, often called the preacher or the teacher, keeps returning to this Hebrew word that hevel, that's traditionally translated as vanity, but really means something closer to vapor or breath, something ephemeral and impossible to grasp.
I love that translation, vapor. It captures the essence of what Ecclesiastes is saying. Life is fleeting, mysterious, and ultimately beyond our control. It's why the book begins and ends with that famous refrain, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity," or perhaps better rendered as "vapor of vapors, everything is vapor."
And yet, and this is crucial, Ecclesiastes isn't simply nihilistic or despairing. It recognizes life's mysteries and limitations, but still finds value in simple joys. Eating, drinking, relationships, meaningful work. It's just more realistic about the limits of human wisdom and control.
That's such an important point. Mark. I think people often misread Ecclesiastes as purely pessimistic, but it's actually offering a profound kind of wisdom, one that acknowledges life's complexities and still finds reasons to engage fully with life.
Exactly. Let me share a quick personal anecdote that illustrates how these different approaches to wisdom might play out in real life.
I'd love to hear it.
So, a few years ago, I had this brilliant student named Alex who was torn between two career paths after graduation. Option 1 was joining a prestigious law firm, stable, lucrative, respected. Option 2 was moving to South America to work with an environmental nonprofit. Meaningful but uncertain and far less financially secure.
Oh, that's such a common dilemma today. So how did he approach it?
Well, what was interesting was watching him wrestle with these two wisdom traditions in real time. The Proverbs approach was pretty clear. Choose stability, build your career methodically, be responsible with resources. That voice was telling him to take the law firm job, save money, maybe donate to causes he cared about.
And I'm guessing the Ecclesiastes approach said something different?
Exactly. That voice reminded him that life is short and uncertain, that wealth doesn't guarantee fulfillment, and that meaningful work might be worth the risk and insecurity. Ecclesiastes might say, who knows if you'll even be alive in 10 years? Do what gives your life meaning now.
So what did he choose?
That's the interesting part. He found a third way. He took the law firm job, but negotiated a delayed start so he could spend 6 months with the nonprofit first. Then he specialized in environmental law and now represents that same nonprofit pro bono while maintaining financial stability. It was like he integrated both wisdom traditions.
I love that resolution. It reminds me of how these books actually work together in the Hebrew Bible. They're not contradicting each other so much as offering complementary perspectives. They're having a conversation.
Exactly. And I think that's why both books remain so relevant today. Let's talk about how modern readers interpret and apply these texts because they've had an enormous influence even beyond religious contexts.
Absolutely. Proverbs has given us not just biblical wisdom, but actual proverbs that have entered our everyday language. Pride goes before a fall. A soft answer turns away wrath. Without vision, the people perish. These are phrases many people use without even knowing their biblical origin.
And what's striking about Proverbs is how practical and applicable it remains. It's advice about everything from managing money wisely to avoiding gossip to choosing friends carefully. These are timeless life principles that resonate across cultures and times.
While Ecclesiastes speaks to our more philosophical or existential side, I've noticed it's often quoted during times of national tragedy or personal crisis, when simplistic answers don't suffice. When life doesn't make sense, Ecclesiastes offers a wisdom that acknowledges the mystery rather than trying to explain it away.
And interestingly, I've noticed Ecclesiastes has found a particular resonance with modern audiences, especially younger generations and those outside traditional religious contexts. There's something about its honesty about life's ambiguities that feels authentic and refreshing.
I've noticed that too. Actually, I had a friend who wasn't religious at all pick up Ecclesiastes during a difficult time and say, "This is the only religious text that makes sense to me." The book's willingness to question and wrestle with life's harder aspects felt real to her in a way that more straightforward religious teachings didn't.
That reminds me of how Ecclesiastes has influenced art and literature, too. Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises takes its title from Ecclesiastes 1:5. The Byrds' famous song, Turn, 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 is straight from Ecclesiastes 3, about there being a season for everything. This ancient text speaks to modern existential concerns in profound ways.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious about your assessment, Mark. Do you think wisdom is best lived as steady discipline, as Proverbs suggests? Or is there more depth in embracing life's paradoxes, as Ecclesiastes might suggest?
That's such a great question. I think both approaches have their place. Proverbs provides the essential foundation, the daily disciplines and practices that generally lead to a good life. Without that structure, we're just adrift.
But Ecclesiastes adds the crucial element of humility and perspective that keeps us from becoming rigid or self-righteous.
I like that. Proverbs tells us how to live well day to day, while Ecclesiastes reminds us to hold our plans loosely and find joy in the present moment because so much is beyond our control.
Exactly. Another way to look at it is that Proverbs works well when life is going according to plan, but Ecclesiastes becomes essential when life falls apart or defies our expectations. Both are necessary for a complete wisdom.
That's a profound insight. It reminds me of something I read recently about how wisdom traditions across cultures often contain this same balance, practical rules for daily living alongside philosophical reflection on life's deeper questions.
Absolutely. And what makes these texts so enduring is precisely that they don't just give us one perspective. Together, they offer a more complete picture of how to navigate this complex, beautiful, sometimes bewildering thing called life.
I think that's a perfect place to start wrapping up our conversation. These ancient texts continue to speak to us today because they address universal human experiences, the need for practical guidance, and the unavoidable confrontation with mystery and mortality.
Indeed. And perhaps the greatest wisdom comes from holding both books in creative tension, embracing the practical disciplines that generally lead to a good life, while maintaining the humility to recognize that life is ultimately beyond our full comprehension or control.
That's beautifully put, Mark. As we close, what would you say to listeners who might be interested in exploring these texts themselves, whether from a religious perspective or simply as ancient wisdom literature?
I'd say start with just a chapter a day, maybe alternating between the two books to experience their different tones and approaches. Read slowly, reflect on what resonates with your own experience, and don't be afraid to wrestle with the tensions and contradictions. That's where the deepest wisdom often emerges.
And remember that these texts have been speaking to human beings for over 2,000 years. There's something powerful about connecting with that ancient conversation about meaning, purpose, justice, and how to live well.
Beautifully said, Sarah. Well, that brings us to the end of today's exploration of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Thank you for joining us for Ancient Wisdom and Modern Life. I hope this conversation has sparked your curiosity about these remarkable texts.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to hear more conversations about ancient wisdom and its continuing relevance. Until next time, may you find both practical wisdom for daily living and the deeper wisdom that comes from embracing life's mysteries.